It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. Ha, it's Feedback Friday. And I got through that without coughing. Go me. Um, almost. Thanks for the patience to Leanna Care's clients this week that had to deal with my coughing fits. It's been fun. I got my first cold in 4 years. And I'm past the bulk of the cold symptoms. Unfortunately, one poor client, my nose split and started bleeding while I was talking to him. That was awesome. But I'm into the asthma after effects part, which is worse than the damn cold in some ways because it means, coughing like a lung is going to come out, and then that irritates my throat, so I cough more, and then my eyes start watering. And as long as I'm sitting here, I'm relatively okay. But if I try to walk upstairs, I'm winded. Chronic health conditions are awesome, but it is Feedback Friday, and there was some really interesting feedback that I want to get into. We'll see how this goes. We'll see how clear my thinking is. Yeah, help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/LeannaK. This video is going to focus on Manly Monday, and then the video I did about High Evolutionary. I don't do as much on Two Women Talking because song's not here, and the whole point of Two Women Talking is I can't speak for Song. Her views and perspective are so different that I don't feel right doing that. So, getting into Manly Minute, I'm going to start with this one comment that this is kind of cool. It's starting to sink in that when you say you've been there about these topics, about putting out one's negative self-talk, you're saying you've mistreated people. I mean, that's kind of obvious in context. It's also just a thing that comes with being human, so it shouldn't be such a shocking realization, but it's such a degree of getting real that I had somehow glossed over just how real it is. That's pretty cool, to be honest. And yeah, I mean, one of the things about PTSD therapy is the D in PTSD is where the problem is, right? It's disordered thinking and it's disordered behavior. And you want to first get from the PTSD to the PTS, which is basically you're living with it and not trashing your life. And then you get to post-traumatic growth, but you have to go through that living with it without destroying everything around you. And yeah, I mean, part of the reason I do the work I do, despite all of the shit I take for doing it, is because I have a unique ability to look someone in the eye and say not only, not just say I've been where you are, I can demonstrate I've been where someone is, right? Like this happened, right? Yeah. And this happened, yeah. And then it was like this, yeah. So somebody instantly feels less alone. But also, one of the things I find the most rewarding to do is say, okay, when you start this process, this is what's going to happen. And it's going to be weird. And I'm telling you this now because nobody told me. And it's things like when alleviation of trauma and integration happens, things start shifting, right? You start feeling things very intensely. Your go-to drink at a bar may change. You may start getting food cravings, and it's so rewarding when someone goes, yeah, that happened. And It's, I wish I had that going through trauma therapy, because that's what therapists don't tell you. Because therapists have to go by clinical stuff. I don't. I can go, okay, what's a person's language? I'm not use the tools. It's like, let's take the things a person likes, use that as a framework, but also here's stuff that only a person who's gone through it can tell you about. And one of the things that makes it hard to move on is to recognize the stuff you fucked up on. You know, it's a mood getting trauma triggered while you're live tweeting an E3 press conference. That was not fun. That was very public. It's stuff like that where it's like, yeah, let's take all the shame out of it, because this is, a feature, not a bug of this process. And the shame and the guilt is what keeps us stuck alongside everything else. And being able to be with people who have been there is very, very important. Because one of the things I hear a lot from people is that they're either afraid they're going to be rejected, or they're afraid they're going to scare people off. And it's very hard to scare me because I've been through so much of it. And, that's cool. It makes shitty things I went through into something good. And that's not saying the shitty things were good things. It's making it into something good, which is part of the healing process. That ability to make things easier for other people makes it make sense. You know where to put it in the narrative. And in older cultures, in past civilizations, they had that before everything became scientific and therapeutic. And so we could tell stories about things, and we could just have community supports instead of go to the doctor, go far away so we can care about you from a distance where it's easy. And that is such a bullshit thing about modern society. No amount of therapy out there can replace community. And this is where we get to Manly Mondays, because one of the challenges I am having with that content, and then the subsequent groups I'm trying to start up, and I still absolutely believe in the group format, because I think that one of the big things I'm seeing there is a unique documented issue with men and making friends, and it's structural. And the problem structurally is all the barriers to getting men to try this shit are right at the beginning. It's the showing up. And that's why a lot of in-person groups are just, show up, you don't have to participate, just come and sit. But even then, if it's too traditional therapeutic language, everybody feels like a loser and people don't go back. I've been there. And so I'm trying to apply some of the things that I wanted from groups to what I'm doing. And part of that is creating people who are in a mindset to be there. And the challenge with group is it is a group setting, right? Other people have feelings. That's the purpose of it. And this is where I get really, there's like a code hang on single gender spaces or single sex spaces, especially. You know, I cannot relate to fear of the penis. You know, I am no more afraid of, you know, if a man and a woman are the same height and the same weight, I am no more afraid of the man than I am of the woman. Because that doesn't make sense. But people have been trained that, you know, men are going to beat you and women are going to screw you over and manipulate you and take stuff from you. And it's really easy to fall into those stereotypes and withdraw from the world because you believe it's safe. The problem is it's not. The problem is that those spaces are predator playgrounds. The false sense of security you get from single-sex spaces, I think, outweighs the benefits of them. Now, the barriers to participation mean that you have to offer them, because if somebody won't go to anything else, you have to offer them. But when they're done wrong, they encourage fear of the other, and that keeps people stuck. I think it's more healing for somebody who is like the person who hurt you to say, no, what that person did to you isn't normal. It isn't the way all men think, or it isn't the way all women think. That's nonsense and aberrant. I see no point in perpetuating the trauma state. And I mean, people have to do that when they're ready, right? And so, like I said, I see a very limited place for single-sex spaces. But I don't think they should be the only thing available. And I don't think they help everyone. Obviously not. I mean, they didn't help me. You want to terrify me, put me in a group of all women. Holy shit. I am more comfortable in a room full of dudes than I am in a room full of women, because in a room full of dudes, the arc is from other to one of us, as opposed to one of us to you're a fucking weirdo, get away from us. And I don't need that. That doesn't help. And especially in the gaming space, we cannot assume norms with gamers. And I'm being very careful here because I know this is a tender point. Because there's something that came up this week in comments. And I see the perspective, but I can't give people what they want here. And I want to explain why, respectfully. And again, I see the argument, but I can't do it because it comes down to language policing. And I think that there's a difference between saying this language bothers me because of bad past experience. Can you keep that in mind? And this language is inherently bad. Because no, it's grunts that we assign meanings to. I can't cross that because there's too many trade-offs that I can't do. Because I do think when you start hardcore language policing, you lose authenticity. And a through line I've seen with a lot of people is that they're terrified to be their authentic selves. And they're terrified to make a mistake. And the community I want to foster is one where, like, I know I use superheroes because I love superheroes. That's my language, right? But in comics, when two superheroes meet each other for the first time, they fight, right? And then they're buds later. That's kind of my jam. I don't totally trust somebody until I've had a conflict with them. And it doesn't have to be a big fight. It's just sort of have to be, I wasn't sure about you, but, you know, I am prepared to be tested. You might have noticed. That's how you build trust. I want people to... I had a guy this week, he asked me to do something for a documentary he was doing, and we'd sparred over the whole Hogwarts Legacy thing. And he said, I'm surprised you're still talking to me after that. And I said, one thing you'll learn about me is that stuff's over. Like, it takes a lot. It takes a personal attack. It takes somebody, like, making negative assumptions about my character for it to be a no-go zone. If it's just a disagreement on facts or an opinion or whatever, I usually don't remember the conflict when it's the details like that. I remember cruelty and I remember false accusations because those are a totally different ball game, right? I want people to be able to have different opinions. I want people to like stuff that I don't like and tell me why they like it. Because sometimes I will get a new enjoyment out of that thing through them. You know, I can see it through somebody else's eyes and go, okay, didn't see it that way before. And I mean, I saw Guardians of the Galaxy in theaters because people raved about it. People that, you know, have tastes similar to mine. Most of the things I consume now are through word of mouth. That's the reason I watched Arcane. The last thing I kind of found on my own from like a conference was Cuphead. But most of the things I do are through word of mouth, and I freaking love Cuphead. And, you know, I'm going to give the D&D movie a chance because people I trust said it was great. I'm going to give the Mario movie a chance because people said it was great. But for me to go to a theater, I literally have to be prepared to die to see the movie. I got sick seeing Guardians 3. But yeah, I like differing viewpoints. I like strong personalities. And that means they're going to clash. And that means we can't word police. The only thing we can do is when you're upsetting someone, when someone is saying that's too far, listen. And the problem with getting into a debate on facts is if somebody has a emotional reaction to something, that I can deal with. That's real. I can accept that. But when they start citing things I know either go against best practices or are refuted by evidence, then my bullshit alarm goes off and I can't. Because if I'm not authentic to myself, I'm no good to anybody. And I can't create a community based on tone or word policing because it will not work. There are plenty of groups out there if you want that. And so I understand that there are some people that have a bad reaction to women get this too, but this is a video for men, or men get this too, but this is a video for women. But to me, that is being wholly factual. Because I think one of the most damaging elements of our culture right now is the false gendering of things that are universal. People just communicate it differently. And I mean, my own personal experience is I've had to learn guy code. I've had to learn girl code. And guy code came to me more naturally than girl code, but neither totally did. And so I know these things, and I've researched and researched and researched because I don't think my frame is the only one. And yeah, we're seeing the statistics approach parity on sexual abuse and domestic violence. When I started monitoring the statistics, it was 1 in 4 women and 1 in 8 men experience some form of sexual abuse. This was years back. The numbers have now shifted to 1 in 3 women, 1 in 4 men. That is a much smaller divide than 1 in 4 and 1 in 8. And that matters. Because I can't go into so-called feminist circles and say, no, this is not a woman problem. This is a people problem. And one person suggested that wording, and that's the best suggestion I got. I can work with that. This isn't a woman problem, this is a people problem. I can't go into feminist spaces and do that and then take feels over facts with men. Because somebody's going to call me on that double standard, and they'd be right. The other issue is what someone said about neurodivergency in the mental health system. If things are not consistent, if the rules are not the same for everybody and people aren't treated the same, it's very, very hard for neurodivergent people to navigate. And other groups can do what they want. I want the things I am a part of to be as neurodivergent friendly as I can make them. And one of the hardest things is when there are multiple neurodivergent people who all have very strong opinions about something, because, that gets into, it tends to be hilarious in retrospect, but it's tough to navigate at the time, and often it takes a while to resolve. But that's okay. Because they're people too. And I hate the word normal. I hate the concept of normal. I think normal is destructive and toxic. So I respect the feedback, and that's why I've taken so much time to explain why I can't meet people there. And if that means some of the services I provide upset people, I understand. I just can't in good conscience make this correction because it feels like a lie. And I hope you understand that. Because that's where I get into the thing about, you know, I have this tendency as people tell me all the time, I have a tendency to say things that hit people like a ton of bricks. I've taken to calling them mistletoe darts. Because they're like, little tiny thing, someone falls down dead. It's my superpower. And I can't stop that. It's part of me. It's part of the way I speak. It's part of the way I think. I could make myself miserable repressing that all I wanted. I can't. It's never going to go away. So the way I correct for that is to be as absolutely factual as I possibly can be. And when I do mess something up and I see that, I will say so. And that's why facts are so important. And that's why I can't falsely gender an experience for someone's comfort. One, I don't think it helps them in the long run, but two, I just can't pull it off. I'm sorry. I would love to accommodate a legitimate pain. But in a format like this, I just can't. And I'm not going to encourage man hating by women and women hating by men and, cis hatred and trans and non-binary people and transphobia among cisgender people. I'm not, I'm not going to perpetuate racial stereotypes. I'm not. Yes, it's work. And yes, it means I'm going to lose some people. I just can't. It feels wrong to me. And one of the things I feel very strongly about is you guys know that no matter what I say, whether you agree with me or not, it is what I truly believe. I am not pandering to keep subscribers or viewers or patrons or donors or whatever. It is what I truly believe, even when it's unpopular. So that was a lengthy explanation because I do want to show respect for a dissenting view, because one of the things that was said in the comments and with clients is that masculinity and the American Psychological Association, there's that dumb paper they put out, and other people said that some men are so accustomed to being badly treated by women or manipulated by women that they get incredibly suspicious when women are nice to them. So I want people to know that when I'm being nice, it's honest. I'm not going to be nice just to be nice. I'm not really a nice person. I'm a fair person. I'm a fun person, I think. But I'm not nice, right? I'm not other oriented. I soften some things I say because my inner voice is rather harsh and monosyllabic, inner Kratos. But I want people to know that when I compliment them, when I say something is good, I legitimately mean that, because that's fucking real. And even though I know I'm not a real girl, I read that way. And so I think that's really important. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. So a few high evolutionary comments in the remaining time. Why people hate him. Some people were like, philosophy majors supporting Thanos. I'd like to say I'm surprised by that. Yeah, I can get into that, but in another video. One person said, the older I get, the more I get mad at these mass casualty events. Someone said, it's like my body is yearning for that validation so much from pop IP. I didn't even realize until you said it. Small scale stakes all the way for me. One of the things I loved about those old Marvel stories is they were just like villain kidnapping girlfriend to spite hero. Throw in all the homoerotic subtext you want in there. Um, there's something to that. There's something to those old Marvel stories, right? Um, Somebody else said, why do we hate High Evolutionary? On the face of it, I struggle to connect the you are nothing mask off act with culture, which feels like more like an impersonal mob thing rather than one person actively revealing their callous nature. But I may have missed and not seen the movie. Um, that's something I've debated with a lot of people, like whether that scene was personal, the you are nothing scene in Guardians 3. But that's a spoiler. We can talk about it later. One person said it's because the characters involved are children, that High Evolutionary is more disgusting. Didn't consider that. Didn't see them as children personally. That's interesting. One person said that High Evolutionary isn't trying to make things better. He's feeding his God complex. That's interesting because Thanos in the comics is called the Mad God. And Thanos is not a god. Thanos also has a God complex. And there seems to be a difference in the way people interpret Thanos' actions regarding Gamora. And is it the Soul Stone? That in order to get that stone, he has to sacrifice the most important thing to him. But the most important thing doesn't mean he really loves Gamora. For a narcissist, the most important thing is the shiniest extension of themselves. And this is something really important to recognize if you realize you are in a close relationship with a narcissist. I've had to realize this about people. They value you. They do not love you the way a person with empathy does. They may love bomb you. They may be very good at making you feel great temporarily. But they are not capable of the empathy that love requires. They understand empathy. They know when someone's upset. They just don't care. It's the exact opposite of autistic people who can't read necessarily that people are getting upset. But unless it's like super obvious, unless someone says, you are upsetting me, I am getting upset by what you said, they may not know. When they find out, they feel terrible. It's the exact opposite. So narcissists can manipulate people because they know what somebody's feeling. They understand human emotion. They just don't share it. And so Thanos, if Thanos truly loved Gamora, he would not be able to do what he did. He sees Gamora as property he can sacrifice, making him no different than High Evolutionary that way. Now, I argue that Kang is actually different because Kang has that wonderful line at the end of the Loki series. We're all villains here, right? He's aware. It's Iago in Othello. I am a villain. He's doing it consciously because of an existential threat. But the thing that Jonathan Majors does so well in his portrayal is you see how it's twisting him. You see him struggle with feeling like he has to do the bad thing. And that's very different than High Evolutionary or Thanos, who doesn't have that angst. They are 100% convinced that they are right and everyone else is wrong. And that's why you can't, that's why you can't substitute the different characters. And that's why Joss Whedon was so bad for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because this is a quote from Yahtzee, Ben Croshaw, not me. Read Joss Whedon. The man has no concept of character voice. Very few lines from a Joss Whedon character could not be said by any other Joss Whedon character. He will go for the quip before he will go for the character accurate line. And the motivations of the different villains have to matter because it's Marvel. DC just has, other than Lex Luthor and some of the Flash villains, DC just has super OP, big bad, go fight. Marvel's villains were always more personal. And they were always either mentally ill or abused, or some wrong had been committed or something. And that's what made Marvel such a breath of fresh air in the Silver Age, when it was the 60s and the world was going through massive growing pains. We are once again at a time where the world is going through massive growing pains. And so we need those Marvel-style villains. And that's why I have high hopes for James Gunn going over to DC. Because maybe we'll finally get a truly great something DC. I do not think there has been a definitive Superman movie. I do not think there has been a definitive Batman movie. The closest for Batman was Batman Returns. And even then, there are issues. Luthor was wrong in the Donner Superman film. And I love that movie. But Luthor was wrong. There were even issues with the Wonder Woman movies. There is room to improve. Don't get me started on Aquaman. And don't get me started on Ezra Miller's Flash. It's not out yet. Him in Justice League. There's room for improvement. So I have high hopes. I'm leaving on hope, Superman style. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Hey, I got through this video. Almost. Patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Ko-fi.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching, and shit, don't have it ready. Have a great weekend.